Hello, I'm here to tell some stories. I am the gnome from home, and today's story is going to be Jan Brett, Christmas Trolls. I am Treva, and the day my brother Sama and I went out to our neighbor's farm to pick out a Christmas tree was the beginning of our most unforgettable Christmas ever. You can see the two little kids on their reindeer over here, and they've got their doggie with them over here. And way down here in the bottom you can see a hedgehog. I love hedgehogs, don't you? As we went home through the forest with a perfect tree packed on the sleigh, Toofy started sniffing and barking. I think Toofy is the dog. I couldn't see anything, but I felt for sure someone was watching us. Now, if you look in the sides over here, you can see that there's a little guy up in the tree here, and over on this side, there's a little guy in the tree down there. And there they are taking home their Christmas tree. They got their reindeer pulling it, and Toofy the dog is following them. When we arrived home, we forgot all about the forest. Mom and Dad brought out our boxes of ornaments to decorate the tree. Sammy and I put evergreen wreaths, mistletoe, and holly all around the house. We had already wrapped our presents and hidden them away for Christmas morning. And so here they are inside of their house. And you can see the little girl and the little boy and their beautiful Christmas tree. But in the sides over here, you see these little guys, and they're looking in. You see them? Oops, there we go. Getting used to this new camera. Then some of our Christmas decorations started to disappear. I didn't notice until Dad asked me if we had moved the trinket box he had hidden for Mom. I shivered because Mom had just asked me the same thing about the mittens that she had hidden for Dad. Sammy and I looked in all the usual hiding places, but we couldn't find them. Toofy was acting strange. He sniffed and barked and ran around in circles as if he were looking for something. Now we're going to look at the bottoms of the pages here, and here we see a hedgehog, and he's got a package on his back. Can you see the hedgehog? And here you see the mittens. Where are they? There they are, right there. I love Jan Brett's illustrations. Then a few days before Christmas, the treetop angel was gone. What would be next? I started carrying my favorite red horse everywhere. You see the Christmas tree and the angel's gone. But down here, you can see the hedgehog has the angel on its back. Early the next morning when I went to feed Arnie, the reindeer, I saw something flying across the snow. It was our Christmas pudding. See, there she is feeding Arnie the reindeer, and there goes the Christmas pudding flying across the snow. That's crazy. I harnessed Arnie, bells and all, and raced after it into the forest. As I got closer, I could see that our pudding was being carried along, pin-cushioned on the top of a hedgehog. I didn't know what to do, so I yelled, "Stop! Come back!" But it didn't stop until it reached the bottom of 4 fir trees. The hedgehog put the pudding down and scampered off. Just then, the trees started rocking back and forth. See the picture of her chasing the hedgehog? And at the very bottom here, you can see the hedgehog right there. And they're chasing the hedgehog. Suddenly, a funny-looking ladder dropped down from above, and 2 trolls scurried down, pouncing on the pudding before I could even move. They pulled it back and forth as they went up the ladder, squabbling all the way to the top. You see the ladder with the trolls? There's the ladder with the trolls. And down here's the hedgehog just watching, and the little girl's watching too. I climbed right up after them and looked inside, and there on the floor of their troll house were all of the Christmas things in a heap. The trolls were grabbing at them, each one wanting what the other one had. So here is the little girl. Move the camera a little bit closer, guys. Sorry. Oh my. And she looks inside the hole of the tree, and there are the trolls, and they're fighting over all the Christmas stuff. Hey, trolls, I called. Those are our Christmas things. The trolls dove into the pile, clutching their gifts. Mine, they clamored. Mine, mine. I looked at them and had to smile. Their shirt tails were hanging out. Their pants were torn and patched. Their cheeks were bright red, and their hair was standing straight up from the pulling and the tugging at each other. Christmas, they wailed. We want Christmas. You want Christmas? I asked, puzzled. Yes, they shouted. Give us Christmas. Well, you can't just take Christmas, I said. The trolls looked surprised. They squeaked. They gulped. They shuffled their feet. Want Christmas, they said, sounding miserably. Okay, you can have Christmas, but first, what are your names? Mig, said one. Tig, said the other. I looked around at their messy hut. Mig, Tig, let's begin by getting your house ready for Christmas. I started to straighten up and put things away. They began to help. Nice, I said, when we had finished. Now let's make your house look like Christmas. We went outside and gathered evergreens and berries and pine cones. Now we need a Christmas tree, I told them. That's easy. You live in the trees, so you can have 4 trees instead of just 1 if you want to. Christmas trees, they shouted, jumping up and down. And we decorated each of the trees that held up the troll house. Tig and Mig had a small setback on the way back to the hut. I knew I had some more explaining to do. When I first got here, you were snatching things from each other for yourselves and acting really grumpy. Try playing together and having some fun. Fun? Asked Tig. I showed them how to jump rope. I told them how much I liked their tail knots and earrings. They smiled slyly and shyly and started tucking in their shirt tails. Nice hair, pretty belt, they said, grinning at me. And they taught me a little troll dance. They were catching on. Now, if you really want Christmas, you must be generous with each other. If you do that, you will have Christmas right here in Troll House. The trolls cocked their heads and squinted. They were trying hard to understand. How? They pleaded. I felt my red horse in my pocket. I knew I had to show them. So I took it out and I gave it to them. This is for you. See her little red horse? The trolls squeaked and jumped up and down with glee. They took turns passing my horse back and forth, happily playing with it together. It was time for me to get home. I slipped out quietly and climbed down to Arnie. To my surprise, the hedgehog had packed all of our presents on the sleigh for me to take home to my family while we were having Christmas in the troll house. On Christmas morning, Sammy and I ran downstairs to find our tree alit with candles and our stockings filled. We opened our presents in front of the fire. But this Christmas was full of surprises. I heard a bumping and a scratching noise. Toofy barked. I listened and followed the sounds. Outside on the doorstep was a Christmas present. I unwrapped it and found a wild and wonderful troll doll. "Tig and Mig!" I exclaimed. When I held it, I knew for sure that the trolls understood Christmas, and I knew that this was the best Christmas ever. And that was called Christmas Trolls by Jan Brett. And the other story I have today is the Tomten. And a Tomten is what they call a gnome in Sweden, or Scandinavia, I guess would be more appropriate. And this is a poem that is adapted by Astrid Lindgren from a poem by Viktor Ryberg and illustrated by Wiberg. And you can see the Tomten here. The Tomten. Here we go. It is the dead of night. The old farm lies fast asleep, and everyone inside the house is sleeping too. The farm is deep in the middle of the forest. Once upon a time, someone came here, cut down trees, built a homestead, and farmed the land. No one knows who. The stars are shining in the sky tonight. The snow lies white all around. The frost is cruel. On such a night, people creep into their small houses and wrap themselves up and bank the fire on the hearth. Here is a lonely old farm where everyone is sleeping. All but one. The Tomten is awake. He lives in a corner of the hayloft and comes out at night when human beings are asleep. He is an old Tomten who has seen the snow of many hundreds of winters. No one knows when he came to the farm. No one has ever seen him, but they know he's there. Sometimes when they wake up, they see the prints of his feet in the snow, but no one has seen the Tomten. On small, silent feet, the Tomten moves about in the moonlight. He peeps into cowshed and stable, horse storehouse and tool shed. He goes between the buildings, making tracks in the snow. The Tomten goes first to the cowshed. The cows are dreaming that summer is here, and they are gazing in the field. The Tomten talks to them in Tomten language, a silent little language that the cows can understand. Winter's coming and winters go, summers come and summers go, soon you can graze in the fields. The moon is shining into the stable. There stands Dobbin, thinking perhaps, remembering a clover field where he trotted around last summer. The Tomten talks to him in Tomten language, a silent little language a horse can understand. Winters come and winters go, summers come and summers go, soon you will be in your clover field. Now all the sheep and lambs are sleeping soundly, but they bleat softly, bah, when the Tomten peeps in at the door. He talks to them in Tomten language, a silent little language the sheep can understand. All my sheep and all my lambs, the night is cold, but your wool is warm, and you can have aspen leaves to eat. Do you like to eat aspen leaves? Yummy. My favorite. Then, on small, silent feet, the Tomten goes to the chicken house, and the chickens cluck contentedly when he comes. He talks to them in Tomten language, a silent little language that chickens can understand. Lay me an egg, my jolly chickens, and I will give you corn to eat. The dog kennel roof is white with snow, and inside is Carol. Every night he waits for the moments when the Tomten will come. The Tomten is his friend, and he talks to Carol in Tomten language, a silent little language a dog can understand. Carol, my friend, it is cold tonight. Are you cold in your kennel? Are you all right? I'll fetch more straw, and then you can sleep. The house where the people live is silent. They are sleeping, though. They are sleeping through the winter night without knowing that the Tomten is there. Winters come and winters go. I have seen people large and small, but never have they seen me, thinks the Tomten. He tiptoes across the cottage and stands looking for a long time at the children's cot. If they would only wake up, then I could talk to them in Tomten language, a silent little language children can understand. But children sleep at night. And away goes the Tomten on his little feet. In the morning, the children see his tracks, a line of tiny footprints in the snow. Then the Tomten goes back to his cozy little corner in the hayloft. There in the hay, the cat is waiting for him, for she wants milk. The Tomten talks to the cat in Tomten language, a silent little language a cat can understand. Of course you may stay with me, and of course I will give you milk, says the Tomten. Winter is long and dark and cold, and sometimes the Tomten dreams of summer. Winters come and winters go, summers come and summers go, soon the swallows will be here, thinks the Tomten. But the snow still lies in deep drifts around the old farm in the forest. The stars shine in the sky. It is biting cold. On such a night, people creep into their small houses and bank the fires on the hearth. Here is the lonely old farm where everyone is fast asleep. All but one. Winters come and winters go, years follow years, but as long as people live at the old farm in the forest, every night the Tomten will trip around between the houses in his small, silent feet. And that was the Tomten, illustrated by Astrid Lindgren. And again, it is adapted from a poem written by Viktor Ryberg. It was adapted by Astrid Lindgren from a poem by Viktor Ryberg, illustrated by Harold Wiberg. And our last story is a new book to me that I just got this year, and I loved it very much. It's called Tomten Saves Christmas, and it kind of explains a little bit about what a Tomten is. So let me see. These are notes on the Swedish names and foods and places that you'll read about in this story. Norrland could be translated as the Northlands, and is the northernmost part of Sweden. Lapland is one of the 9 historical provinces of Norrland, and Småland is a province in southern Sweden. Jultomten, or Jultomten, is Swedish and is the Swedish Santa Claus, who brings children Christmas presents on Christmas Eve. Farm Tomten, or Tomten, is Swedish and is the farm gnome who helps guard and look after the farm in Swedish folklore, like the book that we just finished reading. Christmas porridge tastes very similar to rice pudding, and traditionally a bowl of porridge is left out for the Yule Tomten on Christmas Eve as a way to say thank you. Christmas ham and meatballs, which is mentioned in this book, along with the creamy potato and anchovy dish called Jansson's Temptation, are other typical Swedish Christmas foods, which I had never heard of before I read this story. So we will start. And again, this is called Tomten Saves Christmas, and it is by Linda Liebrand. Do you remember what you did 2 days before Christmas Eve last year? Really early, at about 4:30 in the morning. You were probably snoring under your duvet, dreaming about all the lovely Christmas presents you wish for. But Tomten was already up eating his porridge on the roof of his farm, just like any other day. You must be wondering who this early riser is, because he almost, but not quite, looks like Santa, doesn't he? Don't be fooled by his long gray beard and short gray legs, though. Tomten might look ancient, and he's only 5 apples tall, but he is as strong as an ox, and he loves to help the farmer look after the farm and all the animals who live there. But I'd probably better tell you that he's quite grumpy and shy around people, because you'll notice that soon enough anyway. Not even the farmer himself has met him, even though they live on the same farm. Just like the last story that we read. Do you remember? All right. So, on this very day, 2 days before Christmas, Tomten was grumpier than usual. I'm going to put Tomten here in my lap. Can you see him? He's here in my lap. Okay. He'd been invited for Christmas coffee by his cousin and namesake in Narland, but he really didn't feel like leaving home. "I like it here at the farm," he said to Elvira the cat, and scratching her on the chin. "I don't need to go anywhere to enjoy myself." The cat rubbed against him and purred as if she agreed. Tomten slurped his cup of coffee on his way into the barn, and suddenly he heard his cousin's reindeer landing on the roof. Now, how typical! I was just about to go milk the cows, and here comes that braggart of a cousin with the same name as me. Now I have to listen to him boasting about flying reindeer and the Christmas workshop and all the lovely children, not to mention that annoying Christmas Eve itself. Who cares? Elvira meowed and nodded. "That boasting show-off hasn't done an honest day's work in his whole entire life," muttered Tomten to the cat, and he hoped his cousin wouldn't be able to find him inside the barn. Tomten sat down to milk Rosa the cow. It wasn't long before he heard a burst of booming laughter behind his back. "Ho-ho-ho! So this is where you're at." He recognized his cousin's cheerful voice. "Hello," muttered Tomten under his beard. He stood up and was instantly enveloped in a big hug. "Oh, big hug." "How lovely to see you again, Tomten," said his cousin, and he laughed again. "By the way, isn't it funny how we're both called Tomten? Ho, ho, ho!" His cousin giggled and held his arms around his big, round belly. Can you tell who his cousin is? It looks like Santa Claus to me. "I'm not so sure it's funny exactly," said Tomten, and he frowned. "People confuse us all the time and send their wish list to me every day. My wheelbarrow is full. Look!" Tomten pointed at the wheelbarrow, which was chock full of letters from all around the world. Just then his cousin's reindeer came padding over and started nibbling on the cow's hay, and managed to push the barrow with all the letters over. And what a mess it made. Do you see? Oh my goodness. No worries, pal. I'll take care of that, his cousin said as he shuffled the letters into a big sock. Let's jump in, big sack, sorry. Let's jump in the sleigh and go to Lapland. I put the coffee on before I left, so it should be done when we get back. Tomten reluctantly climbed into the sleigh while he pulled up a blanket and carefully tucked it in and around his legs. Elvira the cat sneaked inside and laid down on a sheepskin in the back seat. Tomten had never been to Norrland or Lapland. He'd actually never been away from the farm at all. And he held on tight to his hat as they flew high above the forests of Småland. His cousin pointed at something, and Tomten carefully peeked over the edge of the sleigh. Can you see the lights down there? Asked his cousin. Those are the villages waking up, and they're full of nice kids who've wished for Christmas presents. Tomten had never seen the world from this high up. His cousin pointed at lots of landmarks, and Tomten just stared with his jaw dropped. He had no idea the world was this big. Soon they saw the mountain peaks up above the horizon, and the reindeer put on their brakes. The landing was bumpy, so Tomten held on tight until the sleigh glided smoothly across the snow. They had landed just in front of a big sign that read, "Workshop Open." Tomten shivered and rubbed his arms to warm up. His breath came out looking like the smoke from a chimney. It's really cold up here north here, isn't it? He said to his cousin, who simply jumped out of the sleigh laughing. Ho, ho, ho! But his cousin's workshop and farm looked both warm and inviting. With Advent candles in all the windows and a huge Christmas tree out in the courtyard, the roofs were covered in thick snow and glimmered so magically in the morning light that Tomten couldn't help but smile. Perhaps the holiday wasn't such a bad idea after all. Elvira jumped out from her hiding place, landed on Tomten's lap, and purred happily. So, you came along too, did you? Chuckled Tomten, and he hugged the cat. His cousin's helpers ran around the courtyards with their arms full of strangely wrapped presents of all shapes and sizes. Tomten and Elvira jumped out of the sleigh, and Tomten sighed with relief when he felt the snow creaking under his clogs. His cousin's wife came out and waved hello. The little kids ran around playing happily and pulled Tomten's trousers leg. Right then, said his cousin, perhaps we could start at the workshop. What do you say? Okay, said Tomten, that sounds good. They stepped into the workshop where preparations for Christmas were steaming ahead. Tomten started thinking, well, Christmas Eve is just a few days away, so of course they are busy now. Perhaps I was wrong about my cousin after all. He actually seems to be working really hard here at the workshop. He could see thousands of Christmas presents stacked floor to ceiling. His cousin's helpers were painting and wrapping balls and trains and dolls and games and other toys that kids had wished for. The tiny helpers were huffing and puffing as they loaded their arms full and carried their gifts out through the door. Tomten thought it looked so heavy that he rolled up his sleeves to help out. Hang on there, he called out. Just stack them up here and I'll take care of it all. He held out his arms, and his cousin's helpers stacked up so many presents that they nearly hit the ceiling. Where do these go? Tomten asked his cousin. Ho, ho, ho! Well, put 'em out in the stable, his cousin laughed. Tomten pulled his brows together like this and pursed his lips tightly like this and didn't sound good. That didn't sound good, he thought. The stable was the animals' home, not a strange place for gifts, not a storage place. Elvira twitched her tail and followed them into the stable. The aisle was so full of presents that Tomten and the cat could barely gosh, Tomten the cat could barely pass through. He unloaded the packages onto a hay bale and turned to his cousin. Where do the reindeer live now that the stable is so full of clutter? He asked. Come, I'll show you, replied his cousin happily. They walked down to the reindeer stables. Around the corner was a chicken coop. The reindeer have moved in here until Christmas is over, said his cousin. His cheeks burned bright red when he saw Tomten frowning at the mishmash of animals. The reindeer lay crisscrossed on the nesting shelves, and a couple of misplaced chicks played tag among the hooves and muzzles. A feather landed on Elvira's nose, and she batted it away with her paw and growled. And where did the poor hens and roosters live now, then? Asked Tomten tensely. His cousin squirmed and looked embarrassed. They live in the doghouse. They went to look at the doghouse where the hens huddled in the dog basket. The rooster had made a nest in the dog food bowl, and the little chicks played with an abandoned chew bone. Tomten got so angry his ears turned bright red and started to smoke. And where do the dogs live now, if I may ask? He muttered between clenched teeth. They share with the goats, his cousin whispered shyly, and ran up ahead to show the way. And indeed, there in the goat stable, the dogs were squashed in under the goats' bellies to fit in. Now here you can see the chickens in the doghouse. No, stop! This is bonkers! You can't go on like this, Tomten called out, and he waved his fist in the air. I have a proposal. We're both called Tomten, but we're both good at different things. I am Farm Tomten. See the dogs with the goats? And you're Yule Tomten. I have a lot of space for packages and presents at home, in the hayloft at my farm. Why don't you come there and start wrapping the gifts that are going south? You can still use the workshop for the gifts that are going north. Then I'll call for the moose, and they'll love to help pull the cart. We can use the old horse cart, and we'll all help deliver the gifts. So the chickens got to go back to their chicken coop, and the goats got to go back to their goat house without the dogs. Oh, you're so kind for helping us out, smiled his relieved cousin. Thank you so very much. Tomten blushed under his beard. Oh, but of course I'm here for you. What else is family for? They both laughed and started to load the Christmas presents onto the sleigh. Tomten took the reindeer back into the stable. The hens could go back to their coop, and the dog curled back up in his baskets again. When everyone was back in their right place, Tomten smiled with relief, and the two cousins and their cat flew back south to the Tomtens' farm. The hayloft, you can see the dog in his bed. The hayloft was a perfect place to store presents. They used hay bales to make tables and chairs, and they stacked presents all the way up to the ceiling. On Christmas Eve, they got up early and started loading the presents onto the horse cart. Yule Tomten handed a bag to Farm Tomten. Here's a bag of flying powder. Give it to the moose and the horses, along with a handful of oats, and things will go much faster. Tomten nodded delightfully and thanked him. Then off they went to fly from house to house, knocking on the nice children's doors. If anyone was surprised to have their Christmas presents delivered by the small gray Farm Tomten instead of Yule Tomten, they didn't say a word about it. And see, here is Tomten, the small gray Farm Tomten, and here is Yule Tomten dressed in his red Tomten Santa suit. And did you see the moose pulling the sleigh with a horse? Isn't that funny? In the evening, when Tomten and all the animals came back home to Yule Tomten's workshop, they were met by a wonderful smell. Christmas ham, meatballs, and Jansen's Temptation. I don't think I'm pronouncing that right, but I'm trying. And of course, Christmas porridge. Mrs. Tomten had cooked a wonderful Christmas meal for everyone at the farm. Tomten's belly grumbled, and Elvira meowed happily, spying all the good food. Perhaps leaving home every now and then to see the family wasn't such a bad idea after all, thought Tomten as he spooned up a big bowl full of porridge. Elvira sneaked up onto the table and scoffed a big meatball before anyone had a chance to shoo her away. Tomten found a small roll-shaped present without a tag tied to his spoon. He opened it carefully and rolled out the piece of paper that he found inside. "One return ticket to Lapland," it said, and there was a small bag of flying powder too. "We hope you come back to see us real soon," laughed Yule Tomten. "Ho, ho, ho!" And Farm Tomten clapped his hands with glee. The warmth from the porridge spread from his tummy through his body, and Tomten felt so happy among friends and family. And yes, that's how Farm Tomten and Yule Tomten became best friends last year. So don't be surprised if your Christmas presents are delivered by a small gray Tomten this year. But whatever you do, don't forget to put out a bowl of porridge for him, or else he becomes an awful grumpy Tomten again. Perhaps you're wondering, who's been telling this story? Go back and look at all the pictures again. Can you see someone who came along on Tomten's trip to Lapland? That's right, Elvira the cat. That's me, and just for the record, I got more than one meatball that Christmas meow. And that is the end of the story. I hope you guys enjoyed story time. Have a great Christmas. And again, that story was Tomten Saves Christmas by Linda Liebrand. Thanks for joining me. Bye. Merry Christmas.